here tonight. There's going to be a ton more of that going on. It's a full day event here in Knoxville, April 14th.
27th.
27th? Man,
use Google.
I either have to drink enough or I should stop drinking. So, cheers, everybody. Tickets are on sale right now for
$89.
Unless you want a VIP ticket, then it's $50 more. So go check it out. We've got a ton of awesome speakers coming in throughout the country, throughout the Southeast. We've got attendees from California, Colorado, like all
there's nobody from Colorado.
Yeah, we've got people kind of coming in. If you look at it compared to other social media events, the price is incredibly cheap. And last year, I will tell you, it's sold out. Overflow tickets went on sale; those sold out. So get your tickets early, and hopefully we'll see you there. So tonight we're going to have a little smackdown. We've got 4 people up here, each representing a different social network. We've got. You guys want to just introduce yourselves?
I'm Shane Rhyne, representing Google Plus, and hold your applause. Thank you. All right, thanks.
I'm Rick Laney, and I'm representing Twitter.
Woo! We chose him based on his height in the short content.
Smackdown! Let's keep it professional. No personal attacks.
I'm Nicole Denton, and I'm representing Pinterest.
The beta version.
And I'm Katie Granju, and I'm representing Facebook.
All right, so thanks all for coming out tonight, for sitting on our panel. So I want to start off and talk a little bit about, what do you think makes your social network different than the other people at the table? And why don't we kick it off with Shane?
Sure.
Give everyone else a chance. So what makes what does Google Plus have that Facebook does not?
I think what Google Plus has over the long term is, of course, the ability to integrate, I think, with businesses' SEO needs. It is, to me, a more professional network that I like because while I use Facebook to chat with all my high school buddies, Facebook, Google Plus allows me to integrate and segregate my messages. Talk to them. Well, I need to convince you, apparently. But no, so Google Plus I like to use Google Plus because of the way I think it allows me to filter my content so that I can mix personal and business in a way where it's not a complete blast out to everybody, so that my high school friends don't have to worry about what I'm doing at work, and my work friends don't have to know about the raging kegger that's going to go on Saturday night. And so I like to use it for that.
Cool. Rick?
I think Twitter is better than Facebook because I believe that it's faster. If you think back over the major news events that have happened in the past couple of months, just about every one of those events is broken on Twitter. It's quick, it's concise, with the exception of the death of John Bon Jovi, which Katie did beat Twitter on with.
For those who didn't hear, John Bon Jovi's not dead. However, it did spread like wildfire that he did pass away.
Secret.
The Kardashian marriage is over, right?
Yes, that one is correct.
So obviously, anyone that's used Pinterest knows that it's completely different. I think it's probably my main argument than the other three. The other three I don't think compete with it in any way. It's anyone that's used it, very visual. You get tons of ideas and inspiration. You can also, pin, if you're promoting something. I know HGTV uses it a lot to promote kind of their own brands and their own things while also building that lifestyle. It's huge for referral traffic. I think a recent study just came out maybe this week that actually refers more traffic than Google Plus. And actually more than Google Plus, LinkedIn, and YouTube combined.
To be fair, that was the hair braiding sites.
And the behemoth, Facebook. What do you think? What does Facebook offer that?
Well, I love being the behemoth, but what does Facebook offer that other sites don't? People? No. Obviously we're having a lot of fun here, but all of these sites are really different, and like in terms of social media strategy, they all serve a different purpose. So I think it's great that we're having fun, but I also sort of as a strategist want to be sure that there's nobody in here who thinks that we're actually sort of saying let's compare TV to billboards. But
all the time.
but as a really geeky person who was on Friendster, like I was on Friendster big time, and who did go to MySpace, and who did then end up on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and Pinterest is like a wholly different beast that I'm in love with. But Facebook finally did what there had been the promise of for a long time, and just like anything that is really iconic and sort of so ingrained in American culture or world culture now that you can't get away from it. There's a lot of complaining about it, but it's part of what it's like the telephone now. Does that mean that we won't eventually have some other version of it? I don't know, but Facebook, for someone like me who's been doing social media and social networking since the late 90s, Facebook was that tipping point that we kept predicting for years and years and years. It really was. And so for a lot of people, Facebook is social media. That's all it is. They may read about Twitter, they may read about Pinterest, although I will tell you, I think Pinterest is the next Facebook. But they're not using it. Facebook is...
You're not doing a good job of selling.
Facebook is deeply ingrained in our lives in a way that no other social... To me, Facebook is sort of like Kleenex or a car or a Coke, or it's there may be other kinds, but it is going to be the first. And
so that's actually really interesting. So if you look at Pinterest, the only way you can log in to Pinterest, or the main way to log in for a while, was with a Facebook. You had to have a Facebook account. So Facebook has kind of been this underpinning of access to other sites, which I think plays. I haven't seen Twitter off a little bit, Google Plus. Not really so much, except for the other Google products. So you actually brought up something interesting, Shane. From an SEO perspective, I know it's been talked about. What are your feelings on the fact that just being active on Google Plus might actually change the cost of a paid search campaign, the effectiveness of your SEO? Do you kind of support that? Do you think it's a valid?
I think it is. I think that what we'll see, Google is obviously going to roll this out with Google first. The idea that we're seeing this already with the first rollout of Search Plus Your World. I'll admit I'm not a huge fan of the entire way that works right now. But right now the only thing they have to work with it is with Google's own data. I think we'll see over time they will filter in what Twitter is doing. I think Facebook will eventually have to join the fold in that as well, because these Google Plus, what you have to remember, the parent of Google Plus is Google, the most visited website in the world. They collect all the data. What I always point out is that Facebook is expert at telling people how people use Facebook. Google Plus is expert at telling you how people use the internet. And that's a distinction with a major difference. And I think that the more data they gather through Google Plus and its tools, the more important it will be long term for SEO for businesses.
I want to jump in on that because I have a different take on the social networking aspect of SEO, your search engine results with Google, and I've played around a little bit with it. And if you look at millennials and you look at the folks that we market to, the data shows that the people they trust the most are people that they see as experts or users at that given moment. If a kid's going to buy a backpack for a hiking trip he's taking in the Amazon, he's going to look for somebody who's used that backpack in the Amazon. The second person or the second group that they look at are their family and friends. Family and friends are not their top source for data or information. The last place they look for companies, corporations. And so if your network, your social network, and your friends and your family and the people that you're associating with online are driving your search engine results, there's a real marketing flaw in that formula, in my mind.
Well, I think that what we're seeing, though, is the next evolution is coming with social search, which is what the whole Search Plus Your World is about, is moving it. Because when you search right now and you do use that, I call it spy world, but that's what it is. When you use Search Plus Your World, you're finding active conversations that are taking place about the backpack. And you also will find the circle or the page for the company that has the backpack, but the first thing that you're catching are those individual conversations that are taking place about the backpack.
Only on Google, though.
Only on Google now. But
Right.
I think over time that they have to start with something. And Twitter, they used to, remember they did Twitter up until this last year. And Twitter decided not to renew the contract because you could actually use Google to search what people were saying on Twitter about the backpack.
You know, no data exists yet that I can find, because I did before we came tonight, to say how people are using Search Plus Your World yet, but I can tell you sort of anecdotally, like I am, and everyone in this room are going to qualify as early adopters. If there's something cool or neat online, we're going to try it out. And if I could have a Google chip implanted in my head, I would. I've got no problem with that.
I win.
But I don't use Google Plus the way I use other social networks. I use every other Google product, and I even like Google Wave. I was like big into that. But when I search Google now, and those conversations come up at the top they're the new, like, this is what people are talking about. None of them are people I care about what they're talking about. Like, I don't care what Pete Cashmore of Mashable thinks about backpacks. Just don't.
But he's so sexy.
He is hot. He probably looks really good naked with a backpack, but that's not so
That should be at the top of your
What is it?
I'm tweeting that.
I'm obviously not using Google search correctly.
Seriously, when I search Google now, there's this annoying bar of something at the top with people's faces I don't quite recognize that Google thinks I have something to do with, and I ignore that, and then I go to my Google search.
So it's interesting, we've got fairly, I would consider early adopters in the room. We've got an incredibly early adopter at the front table right here.
Is that me?
I'm sorry, a young adopter. She's too busy playing Angry Birds.
Yeah. She's on Twitter. She's live tweeting.
But how many people have concerns over Google privacy? Is there any? Don't be afraid. All right, so
I'm taking your names
Oh,
down.
I'm surprised. Only like 10% is legitimately
I
concerned.
want Google to steal my identity. I want a new one.
There you go. Tweet that one. Conversely, though, how many people don't have a Google Plus account? Don't be shy. Only 3 people. Wow, I'm actually surprised. How many people are actively using a Google Plus account?
Actively, like what's actively?
Like you go in there and do something. You do something more than click the plus one button once a week.
I like add a friend once a week.
Yeah.
Add a
Okay. What's that? That's a good. I know Shane actually does. Does anyone use Google Plus more than one of the other social networks represented on the table?
I use Google Plus for interest.
Okay, cool. Conversely, who doesn't have a Pinterest account in here? Don't be afraid. Raise that feather.
I'm taking names.
So that's more surprising to me. Actually, that everyone in here, even though we are early adopters, don't have a Pinterest account. It took me a while.
But that's the interesting thing about Pinterest. Like, if you look, this is why when I said it's a different beast, I'm gonna give. If you look at the data around Pinterest, what makes it like notably different from any other social network ever is it wasn't early adopters. I heard about it, and this is when, like Chad heard me say this, my spidey senses went up as a marketing professional. Is my 16-year-old daughter in July said to me, "Have you heard about this Pinterest?" Okay, I can't remember the last time I didn't hear about a social network first on some professional digital site.
It's all downhill from there, baby.
It is. I'm so sucked into Pinterest. But if you look at Pinterest didn't take off among us. Pinterest took off, and there's actually a graph of it, among women in the Midwest. Women in the Midwest who don't use anything but Facebook. That's all they use is Facebook. It is notably different in the way it has taken off than any other social network ever.
So it's an interesting point, Nicole. Do you think that as Pinterest continues to expand, I think the thing that's drawn a lot of people is the quality of the content. Can it avoid becoming the next MySpace? And if so, how do you think that they should accomplish that?
Well, I mean, I think it's the simplicity. There's what people like about Pinterest is it's simple. I read an article today about how Pinterest is like redefining web design because of its simplicity and its block-like structure.
That was only because that Mashable guy was on.
Yeah.
Naked with the backpack.
That's our new hashtag.
So as long as it stays really simple, MySpace's huge problem was it just became, I mean, I guess it always kind of was, so complex and difficult to use and messy and spammy. And Pinterest, you land on it, it's just so simple. It's so easy. I like that. Okay, repin. Oh, I like that. Repin. I mean, you can have, I know on my blog and on Pixel's blog now, we have the pin it button like every other network. I mean, it's easy, little pop-up. What board do you want it on? It's just so easy to use. So as long as they keep it that way and don't, you know, try and go in so many directions with it, I don't see it going downhill.
So what was your, and I'm going to ask this from everyone on the panel, but what was your gateway to, you know, what finally got you to say, like, yes, I want to join another social network? What was that, like, moment of clarity?
Well, with Pinterest, it wasn't. I know something like Google Plus. Sorry, Shane. It took me a really long time. I am usually an early adopter to things, and I did sign on right away. But it was kind of that feeling of like, oh, it's just another place to post all my status updates. Whereas Pinterest is drastically different than everything else. I mean, you didn't need to sell me on it. I was on it for like an hour, and I could not set it down. And I think it's probably like that for a lot of people. So I think just because it's so drastically different, it didn't have that. Oh, well, it's just one more thing to update. Do I really want to do this? But like Katie said, it really wasn't the early adopters that jumped on. I found out about it through the person that photographed my wedding. So
Pinterest is more about reach. I would say Pinterest, the thing that's different for me, and I haven't seen the metrics around this, but I bet I'm right, is that 80% of what I do on Pinterest is retweeting other people's stuff. Like as a blogger now, I'm bringing more stuff onto Pinterest and as someone who works for scripts because I have a strategic intent. But in terms of, it's like the difference between the iPad and a laptop. My iPad is, do I create some content on the iPad? Yes. But my iPad is mainly about consuming content, and my laptop is mostly about creating content, and I think that's the difference with Pinterest.
So talking about those kind of two personalities, Katie, on Facebook, I know you have both a personal and a professional page. I know firsthand that you had some difficulties around that, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are probably some people out here that are freelancers and probably trying to decide, what do I do personal, what do I do professional, how do I kind of manage those different? So what would be your word of advice for someone trying to kind of figure that out?
Live in circles.
On paper, Google Plus is the way to do that. Like I wrote a whole blog post 6 months ago about how Google Plus, on paper, Google Plus is way better than Facebook. It is. But for whatever reason, and some of usability is just magic. There's a part of usability that none of us understand. It just is. And there's also a matter of critical mass. It doesn't matter how much better Google Plus is if I can't get to the people I need to talk to. That's 15 minutes a day I don't have to spend there. But
sure.
Mixing, I'd say, I think it's changed that you don't have to be as careful about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rick, so what got you involved into Twitter? What was the final? Do you remember what the?
And initially, just curiosity. I mean, it was new, and other folks were using it. It was curiosity. I quickly started liking it as much, if not more, than Facebook. And I mean, as Katie said up front, I mean, for the purpose of this discussion, I'm representing Twitter, but obviously I use all of them. And I still, to this day, have a pretty even balance of how I use Facebook and Twitter. I think the thing that appealed to me about Twitter once I was on there was the 140 characters. I mean, you didn't have as much to wade through, and you could follow anyone you wanted. You didn't have to friend and wait until they decided whether or not they wanted you to be able to follow them. You could watch whoever you wanted, and vice versa. You didn't have to follow anyone just because they were following you. You didn't have to see all the crap they posted. So those were some of the things I liked initially. I want to jump over because what Katie was talking about a minute ago with your professional accounts versus your private personal accounts. Mm-hmm. I've kind of I have recommended in very, very few situations that someone have separate accounts. And the only times that I can think about are we deal a lot with the media. And if you're a 25-year-old single girl who's on television every night, you need to have a WATE or WBIR so-and-so site and then your personal account, just for safety reasons and all different kinds of things. But from a professional standpoint, I think that having your personality and showing your personality to your audience, your customers, the people that you do business with, is actually a benefit in the long run, and I don't necessarily think you have to separate the two. It's a balancing act. I mean, I try to use Twitter the same way that I enjoy following Twitter. I enjoy following people who are interesting, who tell me things I haven't read or run across in other media outlets, and who are funny. I don't mind hearing about their kids and their wives. I mean, I know that they run a company and they have a business, but I also know that they have a life outside of that. And I actually enjoy kind of getting that behind-the-scenes look. And so only in very specific and very rare situations do I see the benefit of having to do two separate accounts. And God forbid, I mean, between Google Plus and Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook, it gets to the point where all you do is post, and at least from my standpoint, I'm posting the same thing in different wording.
I have 4,800 friends on Facebook because I'm a blogger. The only reason I switched to a page, and this sounds silly, but it's not silly, is I was getting 600 Facebook messages a day. And I don't like not responding to people. So like on my email account that I have set up for my blog, I have an autoresponder. I read everyone, but it says, guys, I'm so sorry. I get so much email, I just can't respond to you. But Facebook doesn't offer that. That's the only reason I switched, because of the page, people can't message me. I was just profoundly uncomfortable getting all these messages from people I couldn't respond to. So that was the only reason I switched.
And for Katie, in your situation, that totally makes sense. I mean, that's a totally different situation than most of us deal with the number of followers. I think a lot of businesses try to separate that because they feel like you have to have a business personality and then you're yourself just with your family and friends. And I think that's a mistake. I think that you can actually benefit your company and your brand by being yourself and having a personality online.
So moving on to Google Plus, what got you on board, and then follow up from there?
Yeah, my job actually requires me to be an early adopter and some of that anyway, so I was able to snag an invitation, I think, on day 2. But what got me interested in it right away was I started just exploring it. The first thing that got me interested in it was the way Google Plus was automatically integrated with mobile. I was fascinated by the fact that I automatically was able to download an app that was made for the Android, I could do everything on the mobile app that I could do on the desktop. There was no trade-off there. So I really was fascinated by the fact that I could do that on mobile right away. But also one of the things that caught my attention early on with it, what I began to realize was, I've been in this conversation before with other people about Twitter, and there was a time a couple of years ago here in Knoxville. Knoxville, by all accounts, Knoxville is a Twitter town. I acknowledge that. But the thing is, everybody always talks about there was a time in Knoxville when there weren't as many people on Twitter. And the conversations were a little
good old days.
The good old
2007.
Back in the day, back in 2007, back in 08. Yeah, but I've heard these conversations where the conversations were a little easier to find. There wasn't as much noise to filter through, and you could also reach out a little easier to some of the influencers that you wanted to find and engage with them. But now Twitter has reached a point where I think that noise level is a little bit hard to filter through. What I saw immediately in Google Plus was the people that I could not get the attention of on Facebook or Twitter rather and engage with were engaging with me on Google Plus. And I tend to use...
Easy to catch when you're more than there is.
She's just mad that Kim Kardashian quit talking to him on Twitter.
Well, there was a court order. But the thing of it is that Scott Monty and I were talking to each other on Google Plus, where get his attention anywhere else, and it was not happening. We were in a hangout together chatting about work. And I thought, I'm in. Because it was there's a bonus to be an early adopter in Google Plus.
Sure. But what about that kind of Twitter, right? It's either like on or off, right? You're either public or you're private, and then once you're kind of accepted into someone's private stream, theoretically you can see everything. Google Plus, there's kind of some murkiness, and I don't really know. If I add a friend and I get added back, I just know that I'm added to a circle, and I don't know if I'm in the friend circle, the acquaintance circle, or the schmuck circle. And
that's on your self-esteem.
Don's favorite about that.
Yeah. That's level 6.5. That's right above Judas. But it's an interesting thing from a brand perspective, though. Having a brand on Google Plus. How do I know that I'm not in the I hate you category? And do I know? How many people are actually being seen?
Yeah, and that's an interesting development, I think, because brands are still so very new on Google Plus. The brand pages didn't debut until mid-November, I believe. And still there's this whole concept of trying to figure out how they're going to work. I think the piece that I would love to see on the brand pages, which does not yet exist, is the ability for brands to set up public circles. Because all circles are private right now. But if a brand, and Google has talked about this, and one thing I will say about Google that, in opposition to, say, Facebook, I guarantee you there's a hangout taking place somewhere, there's a conversation that's available to take place, you can message somebody and get an answer. And so they talk, and they will take feedback from people. And one thing they are looking at is that idea of a public circle where you can volunteer to be in a circle for a brand. You don't have to let the brand take you in, but it can be essentially a circle of people who just want to talk about the backpack again. And they want to share those notes, and the brand can be there to host that circle, but it's really a customer-driven experience. And I think that's where Google Plus is going to evolve. And that, of course, then feeds back into the whole social search mechanism again. But I think there's some really great opportunities. We are still seeing a product that is essentially 6 months old, 7 months old now. If we were to see Facebook at 7 months old, we would see a radically different Facebook than what we see today. Google has not the advantage, Facebook got to build it behind a wall. Google has to build it in public. But what I like about it is, as they're building it in public, they're telling you, yeah, that was a bad idea. We're going to change that. We're going to do it this way. And what do you want to see? And they're really taking in that input. I think that we'll see with the way brands interact. Right now, one thing I do like about it, a brand cannot follow a person on Google Plus until the person first follows the brand. Sure. That cuts out the whole spam opportunities there. And if you don't follow the backpack company, they can't follow you back.
So, segueing into kind of how to find people, Rick, you talked about on Twitter, it used to be easier to kind of find, it was been talked about, it used to be easier to find people here in Knoxville. What are some tips on kind of, how do you figure out, whether or not, even someone following you, how do you find, how are you going, are you actively engaging finding new people, or is it really inbound now? Where are you kind of in that process?
Probably more, at this point, more inbound than actively searching, but I do pay attention to the recommendations. I mean, occasionally I'll see somebody on the recommendation that I actually thought I was following because they get retweeted by so many of my friends or other folks. So every now and then I'm surprised where I thought I was following somebody who I actually wasn't. There are certain, again, I go back to from a job standpoint, I'm looking a lot of times for specific types of people. There are certain journalists I want to follow, or certain people who write or cover a specific topic. And it's very easy to search and find those people on Twitter and then for me to follow them. And a lot of them end up following me back, which of course for my clients from a professional standpoint is advantageous.
There's still real journalists out there?
There are some still out there. Now, the bad part of that is considering that 90% of what I post on Twitter is like lies, BS, ridiculous nonsense, Eminem quotes, Charlie Murphy on a regular basis. I'm not convinced that absolutely helps my clients all the time, but I can reach out and touch them when I want to on behalf of my clients. And I say that jokingly, but there's actually a little bit of a method to my madness. And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing I'm the only person at this table who doesn't have social media as a direct part of my responsibility. You do, don't you? Okay, I'm not a social media person, so I think Shane would probably be the first to tell you that everything I do on social media, I basically do the opposite of the way it's supposed to be done, and it works. But
for you?
Well, depends. It doesn't always work. I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about that personality and a lot of that people will pay more attention to that 5 or 10% of the stuff that you put out there on behalf of clients that's business related if the other 80 or 90% of it is stuff that they're truly interested in and that it's just creating a personality for your brand.
So Nicole, how do getting on Pinterest, I just joined. Besides, I get this deluge of like, I integrated Facebook, integrated Twitter, here's all the people you know. Besides that, how else are you finding interesting people or people that you think are worthwhile that you might want to repin? What does that exploration look like?
Well, on Pinterest, it's obviously more about your interests and things that you like. So if you're someone that's really interested in recipes or DIY projects, you're searching those things out and you're finding people that are pinning those things. I know when I first signed up, I don't know if this is still the same way, but they gave you like, here's the top 10 people at each, wedding and events or food or whatever. So those people you kind of follow right off the bat if they fall in what you're interested in. But it's not so much, I don't think, about finding specific people as about finding people that are interested in what you're interested in.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about etiquette on each of your, and let's kind of move into some speed rounds. Someone follows you on Pinterest. Do you automatically follow back? And if not, how do you determine whether to follow them?
So usually, if I have a lot of follows, sometimes I will return follow a lot of people at once. If I only have a few new ones, I'll go see what they're pinning. If I am following someone, then I find out they're pinning just a ton of stuff that's just crap and I'm not interested in, and I'll unfollow them.
Okay.
So I really only follow people that are pinning things that I'm interested in. But if they're following me, it's probably more than likely that we're interested in the same thing.
Rick, same question.
Same question pertaining to
Twitter. No. So you get a new follow on Twitter. Aside from the email.
It's the same answer. No, I don't automatically follow back. And I find that on Twitter, unfortunately, unlike Pinterest, I'm getting far more spam and triple X porn and all of it. I mean, and I typically just block those people, and I get, probably a dozen a day. And so no, I don't. I typically will look at them. I'll look at their profile. Sometimes if their profile doesn't tell me enough, I'll click on their most recent tweets and read what they're writing about, and if it's of interest to me, I'll follow them, and if not, I don't.
Shane?
No, so I tried actually at the beginning to follow everybody that circled me, and then I learned that was a horrible mistake because I did that in Facebook for a while too.
So you moved them all to the schmuck circle?
I don't. You don't have to have a schmuck circle. That's a beautiful thing. I do have one, but you don't. But no, I look at the profiles. I think that's the key message that really will come out of this. Your profile. If you have not filled out whatever network you're on, fill out a good profile. Let people know who you are. If it just says something like male, Knoxville, and some crazy line about I'm in my chair as where you are in your bio, that's not going to help me figure out what is the value of you. And especially on Google Plus, where if you're not making anything posting public for me to get a read from you, I need that profile to determine what's the value of what you're posting. And so that's how I treat it.
Katie, I think it's probably obvious, but Facebook kind of having, knowing that you do have so many people, what is kind of your...
Well, I think it depends, if I'm doing it for myself or for a brand or for, a client or whatever. In some cases, whether it's Facebook or one of these other, following back is part of what makes the person who's followed you feel like they have a connection with you. So, if you're a brand, the reality is you're never going to be looking at everything someone's putting in their news feed or pinning or tweeting, but there's a sense of connectedness when you follow back. It makes them feel good. When I loved it when Michelle Obama followed me back. Like, there was a little moment of like, wow, Michelle Obama followed me back. But,
Not the same way with the first time Pete Cashmore retweeted.
The first time. But to be honest with you, I am still struggling with Facebook right now in terms of, because I did, and Chad and some other journalists maybe complained for a week, but I used that tool where I converted my personal profile with 4,500 people on it. They have a tool, convert to page, and there were all kinds of problems with that. And now I can't figure out, I do have a personal profile, but I can't, it's a big mess kind of. Facebook does not actually right now have a good solution for someone who would like to have a brand page around what they do and a personal page around who they are. And the only reason I have the who they are one is, again, because you can't have the brand page for one. So,
well, that's kind of like they've launched the subscription product, which is almost like the Google Plus,
right.
idea.
After I
you can put it out there,
that's
but
what
you
Shane
can,
said I should have done. Was just
but
yeah. The thing about Facebook is, obviously it's not perfect. Really, to me, Google Plus is like the sports car. I don't know how to drive a sports car, and there aren't many people who can afford one, and there aren't many mechanics who can work on one. We all kind of recognize that probably the sports car is the superior product. But the reality is most of us drive the Ford Escort, and I need to be in the Ford Escort lane a lot of the time. So, but Facebook definitely has some issues around connecting the personal with the page. I'm still struggling with that.
Okay, we're going to open it up to questions soon. We're trying to follow the Twitter stream. There's a bunch of crap in there from a guy named Jeremy Flores. Who's posting nothing but lies. And half-truths, if you've been following.
I ain't no follow back girl.
So for the starting out with Shane, Facebook, friend or enemy?
Now we all have to look.
Facebook, friend or enemy? I think that they will live, I see them living permanently in a binary universe. Facebook and Google Plus can live happily side by side. I don't see a problem with that. If I was anybody nervous about the existence of Google Plus, it'd be Twitter. I think Twitter long term is in when I started using Google Plus, I didn't notice my Facebook usage dropping. I noticed my Twitter usage plummeting.
But you look at the demographics. Twitter is still an echo chamber. It's still, what, 16% of the U.S. population, and only half of those people check it once a week. I mean, we all get this idea that everybody's using Twitter. The fact is very few people are using Twitter. And of those people, very few of them are actually using Twitter. So, but Twitter is growing. I mean, Twitter is growing.
Rick's got some data. Rick's apparently the only one who did homework.
It's just Super Bowl data, is all it is.
Just Super Bowl data.
Oh, Super Bowl data is good.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of stuff come out today. Something like 3,000 tweets a second.
Yeah, Twitter is growing.
I grabbed the wrong article.
You grabbed the article. Why Google
This
just
is
buy
why
Twitter.
Google should buy Twitter.
Okay.
The other article said that there were over 10,000 tweets per second during the final minutes of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
10,000 tweets per second.
That was mostly me. But
So what's your Facebook friend or foe for Twitter?
Friend.
Pinterest?
Friend. I mean, like you said, you needed Facebook to even get on Pinterest to begin with. I think now you can do it with Twitter, maybe you decided wrong like that. Mine's still connected to Facebook.
Okay. Questions for a panel? I know this is not a shy crowd.
Anyone want to ask me about Instagram? Because I love Instagram. I put you all on Instagram.
Katie's absolutely. Facebook is not.
So would you consider Pinterest the new Tumblr?
I have definitely heard that. I don't think that Tumblr had as big of a reach ever as Pinterest does now. And Pinterest is growing really quickly. I don't know. It might be for some people that use Tumblr, but I think for other people it's just a completely new thing in general.
Who's on Tumblr here before? Like 10 people. Okay.
I was going to say with regards to Pinterest, I get out of Pinterest for the American Museum of Science and Energy what I wanted to get out of Dig and Stumble Upon.
Yeah.
Which is that traffic? Is that what what did you want to get out of it?
It's basically what I want to do is I wanted to share information in, and for lack of a better word, boards. I wanted to categorize it in these areas where people could go and see the stuff that I think that the museum finds it interesting, that people of, Manhattan Project, cool science experiments for your kids can find really easily.
Cool. Always good to hear success stories. Jeez. Liar in the back.
That would be me. Who takes the biggest hit with SOFA? So if SOFA passes, who takes the... Kind of talk about that each one.
I think Pinterest takes the biggest hit with SOFA.
Pinterest, yeah.
And then all the GIFs on Google Plus.
On the one question I have with Pinterest is it's a pretty interesting site. It's pretty cool functionality, but I can see how all the others monetize. Facebook obviously already monetizes mine, and I can see how Twitter and Google Plus can monetize. I can't see how Pinterest can monetize and not hurt what makes it great.
It's a great question. I mean, Facebook, right? Facebook didn't have a business model when Zuckerberg turned down $500 million. Twitter, didn't have a business model for the longest time. Google Plus, we kind of know what it is. It's selling. It's in AdWords integration. Nicole, and then everyone. Where do you think? Where does the business lie, so that they can start? They can do some things other than just keep the lights on.
Well, I think Twitter was kind of in this place at one time where people were like, what's Twitter going to do? And I think Pinterest will kind of take a similar approach to that with sponsored pins or sponsored boards and just kind of integrating stuff that you might be interested in. It's, there's not a ton of it, so it's not overwhelming, your feed when you log in. But I think that that's the way they'll go, kind of the way that Twitter did.
Any other thoughts on, what do you see? Everyone up here works with brands. What do you think Pinterest could do to get your brand dollars? Shane?
Well, I think Pinterest could do to get brand dollars.
Yeah.
I think that's a tricky one. I don't think it's going to be in the world of sponsored pins. I think sponsored boards is something that might work for them, for brands at some point down the road.
There's already brand expansion though, because people are pinning ads.
Essentially, yeah.
People are already pinning retail product and consumer product, and it's working in accidentally.
I know,
It's-
no doubt
I mean,
that
that's a
people are
great
making
point.
money, but Pinterest isn't making money.
Well,
Yeah.
Pinterest doesn't have to make money. Literally,
Well, at
I
some
mean,
point.
well,
Either Pinterest has to make money or when one of the other companies on this table buys
Facebook buys Pinterest.
they'll have to make
What
money.
I'm saying is that, like, I tend to hyperbole, but I don't think this is inaccurate. Literally in the history of digital product, there has never been look at how Pinterest has grown, and look at how deep and organic that growth is, and how real. There's never been anything like it. Look at how many pages someone who uses Pinterest turns. Look at the way, go to Mashable and search HGTV in Pinterest. It's only been around, 11 months. We've never seen anything like this. It's fundamentally different to compare it to these others. So when I say it doesn't have to make money, first of all, they have plenty of VC funding right now. But second of all, once you get enough people using something, they'll put up with quite a bit to stay there. So they're getting the critical mass of people there, and if you're going to turn 50 pages on a Pinterest visit, you'll look at 2 pins in there. You just will, because we're already accustomed to doing that. So that's what I meant, is there's no immediate need for them to figure that out. But once you get that many people in one place and that attached to something and turning that many pages, which that makes it very unique, the advertising model will come. I mean, people are going to be, I don't think anyone will be able to afford to buy Pinterest.
We're so long to go with supporting a tool that's so cumbersome without being able to fund it.
Well, theoretically, you're right, but if you look at the audience growth there, and I mean, we all get it's buggy. I mean, we get that. But if you look at the audience growth, people are so excited about this and so attached to it and so sucked in that even as buggy as it is, they, again, it's not just that they're there, it's time on site, it's pages turned. We've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, if people are willing to put up with bugs, are they going to be willing to put
I
up
wonder
with that?
if the brands will approach the consumer. That's what I'm waiting for. The consumer who's got I put a picture of my boots up because I'm a huge cowboy boot advocate. Wonder if the brands don't start approaching the
That's
consumer
super
and
smart,
say,
yeah.
would you throw up an ad on your board for us? Because you're clearly an advocate, you're already pushing our brand.
Sure.
That's what I'm waiting on.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting model that, would a brand be willing to pay to get access
Well,
to a tool that will let them find
They already are. You can't pay Pinterest right now. There's no way to buy an ad on Pinterest right now. But what I can do, as someone who represents a brand, I can go to an influencer in design who has 200,000 Pinterest fans, and I can strike a deal with her. Heck yeah, I can. So people are making money off Pinterest already. They're just not. Pinterest isn't yet.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting. Ads as content that was brought up. I went to watch the Super Bowl ads the other day. I had to watch an ad before I watched the Super Bowl ad, which kind of blew my mind. They literally treated it as if I was watching an SNL clip. So I had to sit through a 30-second Skechers commercial to watch a Chevy commercial. It didn't really make sense to me, but it's an interesting way of is Pinterest able to track that? And
Brenna, you used the word cumbersome a moment ago to describe Pinterest. I'm curious as to whether I'm the only one who feels like setting up the boards and actually establishing a real presence on Pinterest is exactly the word you use, cumbersome. And what I'm finding with a lot of people who are following me on Pinterest, when I click on them, they have 2 boards with 1 pin. And so my question is, of you folks here who are actually using Pinterest, how many boards do you guys have, and how often are you pinning things?
So who has more than 5 boards? Wow. Okay, more than 10 boards? Still half the crowd. Do most of those boards have more than how many pins does it take to fill up the square?
9.
It's 9. So how many people actually fill up an entire square? How many have 10 boards that fill up the square?
I'm ADD, so if I make a board, I have to fill the square.
You're really that's a total OCD thing. That's really, I mean, that's interesting. I have 3 boards with 10 pins across all 3, and I get 3 follows a day. I think a lot of it is the autoencoder from Facebook.
Katie hit on something I was just curious about, time on site. You get Pinterest numbers on time on site.
Chad does. So,
Oh, I was gonna say,
yeah.
well, they won't
Watch.
release a lot of their. Do you have a lot? I know that they won't release a lot of their numbers. They have been talking a lot about growth. Do you have more specific numbers?
I mean, the numbers that we've seen are from like ComScore. The hard part there is right. They'll say they turn like 50 pages a visit. There's no real, if I scroll down the page, am I scrolling? Like, what's a page on Pinterest? It's kind of hard. I don't know offhand like what the ComScore definition is. It's an actual click, right? The idea behind Pinterest is that I could scroll till the end of time and probably still not run out of crap to look at. And so but that in terms of time on site, I mean, I think it is the average visitor per month. It's well over an hour.
Well, and what did Facebook say on the filings? Because it was 55 minutes for half there. Is that the?
But it wasn't that popping in, and this is still a lot. I'm not diminishing this. People. I think the number was divided into 3 times per 24-hour period, which is still a huge amount, and of course coming in and out has its value. But again, there's a lot we don't know about Pinterest, but I honestly just don't think we've ever.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really murky. Some of the Facebook numbers, 60% of users
Right.
are weekly user. But when you look at how they define weekly, it's like you click on a like button, or you used an application that auto posted. The number of people that actually visit Facebook, mobilely or on a browser, is more like a third of users. I mean, it does when they say, like we have 800 million users. How many of those are actually?
What does that matter in terms of advertisers? Because advertisers can still be on the application.
Oh, sure, yes, absolutely. In terms of, I mean, if I'm buying 8 million impressions, it doesn't matter where they're, I mean, I'm buying them from men in these 3 DMAs that also like
It doesn't
vagina.
matter anymore in terms of social media sites. Because it's starting to get so far past that with included applications and everything, that whole metric, is it really even what we all base?
We don't, but as we start to talk about business models, it's an interesting, how active, how engaged